Hello and welcome to another episode of Something to Talk About Live. My name is Greg Rokiski. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm relatively new to PFLAG National as our social media and digital content manager. We're so happy to welcome you to another exciting episode today, July 1st. And even though June is over, remember that our pride continues all year long. To get things started, I'm going to bring on PFLAG National's Director of Learning and Inclusion, Jean Marie Nevada.
Hello, Greg.
Welcome. Good to see you.
It's so good to see you. So, June is over, so I've stocked all of my rainbow headpieces, but I have something special for today.
Please. Perfect.
I think we just needed this for today's episode.
It's exactly what we needed, and I'm even more excited now that I'm here with that.
And like every good queer, of course, I had one waiting in the house just for this very occasion.
Naturally. Did you have to break glass to get it out of the emergency disco case?
Yes, I did. How did you know? Oh, we're on the same page.
Well, I'll see you again soon, Jean Marie.
Thanks, Greg. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Something to Talk About Live. My name is Jean Marie Nevada. I'm the Director of Learning and Inclusion at PFLAG National, and my pronouns are she and her, or for those of you speaking Spanish, ella. Every single week, we get together to talk about something related to LGBTQ equality and inclusion and acceptance. And this week, we are having a show that I have personally been kind of fantasizing about for a really long time. We are going to talk about disco. It is so critical and so important when we talk about LGBTQ culture, the role that disco has played in our lives. And for this, we are super lucky to have two incredible guests today. So I would like to bring in our guests, the disco diva and legend, France Joly.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Franz. And I would also like to introduce DJ Robbie Leslie, who has spent more than 45 years in music. Hey, Robbie.
Hey, how are you, Jean Marie?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Fantastic. Super. Really happy to be here with the both of you.
Oh, I am so excited about this conversation because, I teach LGBTQ history, and one of the things that I always love talking about is how integral music is to our community and certain types of music, and I can't think of two people better to talk about this. So you're both connected in a really unique way that actually does constitute some of our history, and so I was wondering, Robbie, could you tell a little bit about what that connection looks like between you and France and Fire Island?
Yes, absolutely. I'd be happy to. Fire Island was where I started my career as a DJ, and how lucky was I really to have started working out there with the best crowds and the most intelligent people that the gay community was just so vibrant back then. And it was 1979, and I was working at a club called the Sandpiper, which no longer exists. It was replaced by the Pavilion, and there was a certain night in, I believe it was in August. I don't remember exactly the date, but there was a party, and it was the first party that was held on the beach with a full sound system, state of the art, lights like you couldn't believe, several different disco performers. And there was this young lady who we'd heard about, but really didn't know a whole lot of the backstory. And her name was France Joly. She was, I believe, 16 or 17 years old. And a friend of mine here had to babysit for her when I guess she didn't have a chaperone. And her name was Ellen Bogan. Anyways, my brother, who I had lunch with today, I'm up here in Maine right now, he and I were at the beach party. And it was something like, I guess, probably 10 to dawn. And I remember when the party ended, the tide was coming in and it was almost lapping the dance floor. But in any case, France Joly performed, and it was like, of course, there was no internet, but you might as well have had cell phones and high-speed internet, because the word spread like it was electric. I mean, when she performed, when she did her set, it totally spread on the island, spread to Manhattan, and this girl just blew our heads off. It was just, an amazing show, fantastic music. And she's been like, just a darling of the community ever since.
It's true. France, so tell us about what it was like for you. I mean, that's kind of a legendary story. And in doing that, you immediately became an icon in our community. So what was going on?
Oh, well, what was going on? It was crazy for me. The first time I was surrounded with the community, the gay community, and I was actually just learning about it as I was walking on the boardwalks, and all of a sudden I would see this guy with a bathing suit with a big thing, and And I was going, oh my god, oh my god! I didn't have enough of two eyes, I wanted to just just enjoy it. And anyway, and I got to perform in front of how many people you think? 3,000? I keep on saying 5,000, but
I would say somewhere 3,000 to 5,000. Yeah, easy.
Yeah, well, there you go. And the moment I went on stage, Jean Marie, the crowd went berserk, and I was instantly welcomed and loved. That's the way I felt. And the energy of that moment was it. There's never been anything like it ever since. Nothing. It was very, very special to me, and I guess the rest is history. But I have to say that knowing the gay community at a very young age made me such a better person today. And I have to say this, I was very, very lucky.
Yeah.
We're lucky to have you. I mean, it's to have great allies like you. So I want to talk, we pick an article every single week to talk about, and this week we grabbed one from last year from Michelangelo Signorile about disco and about sort of disco's demise, and how his argument is that a lot of it was driven by homophobia and racism. So I want to sort of look at it. And Robbie, looking at disco today, it's often treated as though it was a past trend, which we know it's not.
Yes.
But its roots very much were in gay spaces and Black community and Latino communities. What do you think made disco music so popular, and what has made it so staying?
Right. I think I've heard people answer this in many different ways, and the easy answer is because it was all happy music. But I can tell you, there's a ton of music that is very bittersweet and very poignant and very heartbreaking. So it's not so much that it's happy music, but it's music that really grabs you emotionally and really makes a contact with you. And with your heart and your mind. Of course, dance music today is usually ground out by computer with very little lyrics. And to be honest, I'm a DJ on Sirius XM, and all I play is classic disco. And I do prefer that because I do prefer lyrics. And lyrics came from the doo-wop era of the 50s, big swing era of the 40s and 30s, and the 70s, the wonderful, solo artists of the 70s. And so the late 70s and into the disco era was, it was just a natural progression. And so that's why I think disco it was so popular, because it really did follow a line of popular dance music, but also popular lyrical music.
And Franz, it's interesting that Robbie says that, because I remember talking to you once and you said something about how joyful disco music was. It always stuck with me. It's always been in my head. So for you as a performer, what has been the attraction to it, and what has kept you coming back?
Well, for me, I think it's the romance of that music as well. I mean, the lyrics were romantic, but the music was romantic as well. And the orchestration was absolutely amazing. I always said that disco music is classical music with a beat.
Mm-hmm.
All the orchestration, all the brass, all the strings, and the production of it is so classical to me. And
yes.
Adding the beat, you had the best of both worlds, right? You had I have goosebumps right now just thinking about it, because it transported you. It transported you to all the emotions in your body, and you could relate to it. There was a connection. There was a freedom about it. There was a non-judge. I mean, if we go into the whole era, people felt so free and so connected, and there was no judgment. That era had no judgment. You could be You could be Black, you could be gay, you could be a woman, a repressed woman. And when you got to the clubs, you just became that authenticity. Like you became authentic and felt good. Do you understand what I mean? Like,
I do.
it
was inclusive. It was
yes.
very inclusive. Yes.
Well, then what you're saying actually perfectly kind of cues up my next question. So Signorile's article talked about the Disco Sucks movement being more about a rebellion, not against the music itself, but actually that level of inclusion, that it was racist and it was homophobic. And that's what was really driving it, because there was so much acceptance in those spaces, and that acceptance went so mainstream. So Robbie, when you read things like that, do you see, is that resonant with you? Does that seem to jibe with what you have seen or around sort of the rejection and the resurgence of disco?
It has always vexed me, I guess is a good word, because the stories, there are many stories about what happened in Chicago that fateful night with the Disco Sucks riot, I guess is the only way to describe it. Of course, I was somewhat insulated from that, being that I was working in New York City and then traveling to big cities, basically, big cities like San Francisco or Los Angeles or London. And so these places were like, they loved disco music. They had no issues at all with the music form. However, here's my take on it, and it is somewhat different than that particular article you referenced. I believe that it wasn't so much the music or its intrinsic connection with the gay community that a certain part of our population was having issues with or problems. I think it has more to do with the culture, like, the rock and roll culture. When disco exploded, and that's the only way to explain it, onto the scene, clubs were turning from like live rock bands to discotheques with DJs, the radio stations, and I think this is a big part of it. The radio stations were changing format, and they were abandoning rock and going disco. So if I'm thinking of guys in the middle of the country, or just your average Joes and their girlfriends, a lot of them weren't really comfortable with that culture. And it's not so much, the way I see it, it's not the gay factor. It's they just didn't dance well. They didn't, they were more happy with a bud in their hand and playing pool and hanging out with their girlfriend playing pinball than going out to a fancy club in a knick-knack shirt and, and creased pants and, platform shoes and learning dance steps. And I think a lot of people, it was a rejection of that culture. And it wasn't so much the gay thing, because a lot of straight clubs I worked at, my God, they looked like the stereotypical gay look was everywhere, that sort of stylized look. And also the Village People, I remember, was brought up. And I really don't think the mass market totally got that inside joke, because the whole thing about Macho Man and in the Navy and stuff, I don't think that really sunk in, and unless it was looked at in hindsight. That's my take on it. So I don't appreciate what the gentleman did, and his name slips my mind at the minute, and that's not a bad thing, I guess, in Chicago. But I think he was taking advantage of an opportunity. He's being opportunistic. And there were always people that were going to be haters, and he just, like politics, he played it.
Yeah.
I so agree with what you said. And I believe that disco was just the platform for voicing their hatred towards, the music. They just, and not necessarily the music, but the whole thing about the culture. Mm-hmm. And I want to also say that I believe that it was also a lot of racism, because I remember, back in the day in '79, I didn't even know what was happening, because I was so focused on my career and traveling and all that. So I wasn't even aware of the depth of what happened in '79. But now looking back, I mean, people were coming to the stadium with, artists like Stevie Wonder, who are absolutely not disco at all.
Right.
And I think that it what they created was that that kind of racism that they took the records and had a chance to burn it. Not everybody agreed with it, but it was a platform to do it, and I find it extremely sad. I personally think that you are so right, Robbie, when you said that even the rockers didn't know how to act with disco music. They didn't know how to dance. They were the platform shoes and all that stuff. You are right on the money with that. I agree 100% with that. Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of racism going on there. And, and when you say that it wasn't just disco stuff that was being destroyed that night, you're absolutely right. And I think as we look at it retrospectively and we have more of the details of it, that sort of pattern becomes really clear. And I found that I actually rewatched some of the video recently getting ready for this. And when I watched it, it frightened me because it looked a little bit like stuff we see these days.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
So I want to talk about something much more positive, which is the legacy of disco. I mean, Franz, you've been performing for a long time. Robbie, you have been playing this music for a long time. We are talking about a genre that has had amazing staying power in the ways that lots of other music has not had. So maybe, Robbie, I can start with you, and then we'll go to Franz. What do you think sort of is the legacy of disco? How are we seeing it continue to influence artists now? Because there are some artists creating some really good stuff. I mean, a lot of it is digital, but there is some good stuff out there. So what is ultimately our legacy?
Well, of course, disco is first and foremost dance music. And when you have current artists that are recording dance music, they're following, and they're on our shoulders. And so they're following our lead. And I applaud them. I don't think, the proof is in the pudding. And when you have a new release and it lasts a month and then it's shelved and you never hear it again, that kind of is the determining factor on its popularity. But when somebody puts a lot of imagination and creativity and musicianship into a project, it just shines. And that could be in any decade, from the 1910s from Tin Pan Alley to the 2020s. That's a universal. So I think our legacy is just, it's the children and grandchildren of disco. The dance form, the 4/4 time, the arrangements, the layering effects that we pretty much perfected back in those early days. But of course, technology has improved things so much. All that structure is still very much adhered to, and so it's a dance form, and I do think, and I mean, I know for a fact that in the past, like say 10 years, disco has had like a hugely renewed interest and fascination, and it's not only because it's like kitschy or retro, it's because, as I said before, musicianship is in there. It's like in every track, in between every note and under every vocal, there is a lot of quality. I mean, these producers, all the way going back to Philadelphia, and Tony Green, who worked with France, and so many others. I mean, just countless others. Cerrone in Europe, and Giorgio Moroder with Donna Summer and others. I mean, these are giants, and so it's all quality. Quality survives, and that's. Maybe I'll put that on my gravestone. I just thought of that.
Ironic on a gravestone, it really would be.
But you're right. There's a resurgence of disco because, well, first of all, I've been doing this for like you, Robbie. We've been doing this for many, many years, and there's a demand for it because there's that happy place where you go when you listen to this. I've been doing a lot of private parties, and I've been doing a lot of weddings, and there's not a time where I don't hear a bunch of disco music playing, and from old to young, they're on the dance floor, and they know that music from 40 years ago. It's pretty amazing. And you know what enrages me the most is when people started saying disco died, music never dies. It's part of our history. It's part of our growth. It's part of, I mean, you listen to Lady Gaga doing her music. It's influenced by disco. Madonna, J-Lo. I could go on and on. It's part of our lives, and it's just taking a different form, obviously, because of we're not live with musicians anymore, like you said, Robbie. We have, we have all the equipment and the digital stuff, but and it's changed a little bit, but the basic is there, know. So it's music never dies, and disco will never die, because I refuse to believe that.
We won't let it go. Franz, I want to ask you, because you mentioned something about how history becomes music becomes part of our history. And, I've seen you perform, and I have a very distinct memory of seeing you in a club where I'm pretty sure my wife and I were the only two women there besides you. It was all gay men. And every single one who I ended up chatting with had a story about how your music and disco music played into their lives. Like, it was very specific stories, and all of them told me little bits of LGBTQ history. How does that feel to you as an ally who exists in these very, very queer spaces?
I've always been proud of being part of that space and being part of the legacy, like we talked about before. It's like I said, I became a better person, when I started learning and educating myself about the LGBTQ plus. and I apologize in advance if I'm not politically correct with all the terms.
Oh, you got it.
Okay, good. But I know that there's new terms coming along here, and I am so interested in learning about all that stuff, because it's all about respect. But I regress. Let's continue talking about what we were talking. The gay community made me who I am today. There's no two way about it. They put me on the map, because without that Fire Island show, without the support of the gay people, I don't think I would have accomplished what I've accomplished today.
But if I can add right here, because this is the perfect time, Franz Jolie is in a very small club, a very special artist that I've been lucky enough to work with her at the Saint and in Los Angeles and on Fire Island. We worked together at events like all over the place. And then of course I saw her like world shattering debut on Fire Island, that wonderful night. And by the way, I was off that night because everyone knew that nobody would be at the Sandpiper. They'd all be at your party. So anyways, in working with Franz so many times and in so many different venues and so many different places, this lady here has one of the most charming and winning dynamics with the audience that, I mean, now I'm getting gooseflesh. You were talking about gooseflesh. And I mean, this is something beautiful to behold. And being in the DJ booth, my whole gig is about watching and observing. And she never fails to like latch on to the audience like immediately. And, Come to Me, of course, is like off her first album is like a super smash record. So, I mean, that slow intro, that beautiful, magnificent intro is and she sings a cappella. It's just chills you, and it's magnificent. And so I applaud you, Franz, because you are one in this very small group of really stellar artists that can connect with an audience. It's not just a track act.
Right. Thank you, Robbie. I just want to say also that I so want to thank you as well, because you kept that music alive by playing it all through these years. And it's people like you that are educating the new people on disco.
It's a labor of love. It's a labor of love.
Oh, it is, absolutely. Yeah. And when you were talking about the connection, I connect to the music. The gay community, connects to the music, and it becomes that one big connection.
Yes, yes.
And it's I still have the goosebumps coming. Woo! And it's quite magnificent. That's why I say I've been the luckiest person to have been part of that that beautiful thing.
But I have to say this, Franz. My study of disco is certainly not as deep as Robbie's, but not every artist who's been successful in our space has been an ally to our community. And I think the fact that you have been openly for many years does figure in some of this. This was your choice to be an ally to us. Not everyone consistently. And I think that probably shows. So we have about 5 minutes left. I'm reading some of the comments that are coming on. We had a PFLAG mom who was actually talking about dancing to come to me with her husband at the circus and how much fun they used to have. So I want to ask you both, what's next for you? I mean, we've spent a year in quarantine. We haven't done a lot of the things that we've done, but we know that music is coming back, and there's a desperate need to rebuild community because so many people have been separated, and we know so many people who are LGBTQ have been very isolated. So, Robbie, what is coming up for you? How do people find out more about you and what you're doing? And let us know so people can connect.
Well, thank you. This is a shameless plug, but I'm very excited because I've never done it before. There's something called the Ultimate Disco Cruise, which is coming up at the end of February next year. And I'm going to be the DJ on board. And it's apparently, because it's run several years previous, and I can't wait because they've got like about 40 different acts that will be performing, from KC and the Sunshine Band to Kool and the Gang to First Choice. So I'm absolutely thrilled. And I'm finally getting bookings again, starting actually in August. I will be back on Fire Island. So after a hiatus of 1 year, I'll be going back for year 47. And so, yes, gigs are starting to come back, and I'll be in New York and on the coast. And I'm always on Sirius XM Studio 54 radio every Friday night at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific.
Thank you. And Franz, besides really, really, really wanting you to come back to Palm Springs as soon as humanly possible, what else is coming up for you? A couple of shows, I think, starting to get back on the road soon, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm starting it in September, and I have already 11 shows booked. And talking about the Ultimate Disco Cruise, I was there 2 years in a row. It's absolutely, you're going to love it, Robbie. It's disco all the way for a whole week. Yeah,
I can't wait.
Oh, it's amazing. And anyway, and I'm going back on the road, Jean Marie, and I'm so happy. I've missed the fans incredibly. When I think of them, it's like I choke up because I can't wait to see them and not hug them yet, but
hug all of us soon. Air hugs for a little while, but we're still way looking forward to the Franz hugs. We have just a couple of minutes left, so I want to ask you one last question for both of you, which is, there are lots of young queer people who really don't know a lot about why disco was so significant. If you had just one quick argument for them as to why they should look back into our history and what they should pay attention to, what would you tell them to look at when it comes to disco? Besides, obviously, listen to Come to Me as soon as the show is over.
Well, I would say go to YouTube. I mean, try to. I used to be a DJ at Studio 54, and that's one of the lucky gigs I had back in the day. That's opened doors for me ever since. Either watch the documentary called Studio 54, and that will give you a real insight into the nightlife. That was the pinnacle of nightlife in the New York area, but also that set the tone. But just start doing a little digging, and good music is good music. It doesn't matter what label it's got on it. And just cruise around and surf around YouTube and just see what it brings up for you as far as disco, but sort of stray a little bit from the standards and experiment. Spend a few minutes with something you don't know, and it may open up doors for you.
And Franz, who are you pointing to? What do you think people should look at?
I'm pointing at the Bee Gees documentary. If you really want to really go into depth on what disco did to people, what the ramifications of it all, and I think it's a great educational documentary. And of course, Studio 54 is a great one, Robbie. But you know, just you know what? Just listen to the music and see how it feels, and if you connect to it, and how it just recognize how it makes you feel, and that you'll know right away.
I love that. And Franz, I was supposed to say this to you in the beginning. Happy Canada Day. I completely forgot to mention it. To all of our friends north of us right now.
Very good.
Robbie, Franz, thank you so much. This was so much fun. It is everything I hope for, and I hope we get to do this again sometime soon. And I look forward to seeing you both soon.
I love it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jean Marie, for inviting us. And Robbie, mwah, 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 I love you. Love you.
Back at you, honey. Can't wait to see you again.
Can't wait to see you too.
And that brings us to the end of another show. And that was a little bit too much fun than one should have during their workday, but we do at PFLAG. That's really how it happens. So thank you everybody for joining us for another week. We are actually taking next week off. I think we're going to try to air an older episode so you can continue to watch on YouTube if you'd like. We owe you a little vacation after Pride Month, but we'll be back the following week with a really fascinating new show. So look for information on that. As we wrap up every single week the same way, make sure that you run fast, laugh hard, and most of all, be kind. Please, if you haven't done it yet, get vaccinated so we can all hug really soon. If you need help, visit pflag.org. We'd love to talk to you. See you next time, everybody. Bye.